Hello, my name is Jared Woods, and I have written a book. Can you believe it? The only problem is this book's existence depends entirely on the generosity of others. So, with that in mind, if you feel like supporting this project, please do so, please. You can do that by going to indiegogo.com/project/this-is-your-brain-on-drugs. Because the book is called This Is Your Brain on Drugs, and for the first time ever, I'm actually going to read the first chapter of the main story, This Is Your Brain on Drugs. So, I hope you enjoy it, and even if you don't, buy it anyway. Chapter 1. Suddenly, there came a knock at the door. I found this strange because I was already knocking on a door, one made of solid oak, sitting on my lap with a stench that reminded me of some human murder scene, which is probably because I found it lying next to one. I considered sanding it down a bit, maybe adding some oil and whatnot, when it came again, that god-awful knocking. Who the fuck would be visiting me here? After all, I was alone in my car. I tried to ignore it, but it carried on. I tried to scream really loud in a futile attempt to drown out this persistent racket, obviously forgetting that I wasn't equipped with a proper larynx, and screaming for me was virtually impossible. I even started to hit my own oak door harder to perhaps confuse this knock-bearer and send him on his way, and I was hitting it pretty hard, let me tell you. But soon enough, it became painfully clear that this person was probably the police or maybe a very ambitious beggar, and they weren't going anywhere. I had to be sure. My father once told me that unless you're sure, you're not sure, and I wasn't very sure on this whole knocking subject to begin with. So, with the shotgun in the one hand and nothing in the other, I sucked up my gut and took a look outside. It wasn't anything. Just a tree. Thank God for that. I spun around to glance at the black seat and expected to see my face staring right back at me. It wasn't, but I was somewhat concerned that I expected the sight in the first place. The bloody oak door was still next to me, but it had definitely shrunk. I was losing time. Fuck, I don't have the patience to polish this thing, if that was indeed what I was supposed to be doing. I think I was told to take it to someone somewhere, right? Whatever. I don't give a rat's ass about Susie's arbitrary dying wish anyway. I dug into my pocket. 32 cents. In this city, I could get pretty fucked up on that. This one time I found a shiny 10-cent piece on the side of the road, and by the end of the night, I'd already slept with 3 hookers and schnapped an entire gram of coke. The coke was okay, but the women were all illegal animal hybrids and probably riddled with STDs. That's kind of a turn on, actually. And by that hour, I was so fucked I wasn't sure if the third one even had genitalia. Don't judge me. What was I talking about again? Oh yes, the door! Well, with 32 cents, I could probably catch a cab and take the door with me. I would drive my own car, but it's out of gas. And it's made entirely out of cardboard, so yeah, not exactly ideal on such desperate occasions. I guess the whole realization of how hopeless my situation was came with 2 simple events. The first was when I noticed that the 32 cents was actually only 1 single cent coin, and the second was when she passed by. Her eyes were the main thing I remember. I couldn't see them too well underneath her sunglasses, but if they coincided with the rest of her face, they were as piercing as staring straight into the sun. Her red dress barely covered her midsection and rippled in the wind, despite the fact that there was absolutely no wind out that day. God, she was hot. So hot you'd punch her in the face just to get her attention, but even then she probably wouldn't notice you. I watched her elegance as she glided down the sidewalk without moving her legs, every piece of concrete her stilettos touched blossoming with life. Flowers sprung up from the sidewalk behind her, forgetting the fact that no nutrients existed in the pavement below, yet growing simply out of the yearning to catch one glimpse of this goddess's bum. Her body was so radiant that I caught myself drooling citrus which dribbled onto my lap and burnt my upper legs. My heart was beating until my ears blocked and my lungs wrapped around each other, nearly suffocating me and threatening to explode my heart on. And yet the weirdest factor of all was that she knew my name. But of course, I only found this out much later. No, at this point of time, the only thing that I was even remotely aware of was that this girl was floating down Caesarean Street towards the old hairdressing salon, which also sells crack, all the while the buildings themselves appeared to bow and crumble in her presence. I don't know if she noticed me, but if she did, I hope I pulled my homie gangster face just right. Oh man, I needed her. I needed her bad. She was like the sexy businesswoman type, just out of law school and ready to do my taxes. No, wait, she was better than that. Like the librarian type who was telling me to be quiet while she paper cut my anus with an overdue library card. No, even that doesn't do her justice. She was more like the Catholic schoolgirl type who had never had sex before except for the occasional lesbian action behind the altar whilst the priest gave a sermon, and she hid her blue toenail polish from the nuns and secretly enjoyed corporal punishment in a sexual way, especially in the name of the Lord way, and she knew how to cook a mean steak, and she ate it after dessert, which is always candy floss because she was like that, and when she ate the steak, she let the mushroom sauce run her chin, and she wouldn't clean it off for nothing, but she would giggle, and just for tonight she was looking for someone who fit my exact personal description to fuck her in the ass and then put it in her mouth afterwards. Yeah, that's more what she was like, as if every single fetish in the world had been rolled into one perfect human form. But the door, yes, the door. I can't forget about this fucking door, which was now about the size of a palm mirror. I couldn't make up my mind which thing to focus my attention on, the girl or this gosh darn it cursed door. But I knew one thing for sure, I had to get the fuck out of my car. I stepped out of my vehicle and my foot hit the pavement. The gravel made a crunch sound so loud that it probably scared all sorts of insects, and I felt quite proud, almost godlike. Maybe I was some sort of a god, how would I know? Maybe I would know. The air stank thick of bacon, but I think that might have been the door again. I smacked my lips and slowly looked around. The tree I saw earlier on was knocking on some other dude's car now, and I knew that if something didn't change in my life very soon, I was going to fall asleep. I mean, fuck that. Was I really going to choose somebody's final death wish over the hottest girl I'd ever seen? Thinking back now, I probably should have, but I didn't. Instead, I ran. I ran like one of those Jewish men in an old black and white war film, because they were always running in those things, being chased by some Nazi warfighter jet or whatever. Except, I guess I wasn't actually running like that because I wasn't scared or nothing. What was I thinking about? I needed to concentrate on touching that girl. I didn't care about potential court orders or my previous run-ins with sexual harassment laws. She was beautiful and I loved her, and that was all that mattered. I ran around the corner at full speed. The air on this side smelled like bacon too, so perhaps it wasn't the door after all. I didn't care though. I just wanted my tongue teeth deep inside this cunt's cunt at all costs. And I could see her still, floating a few feet ahead of me, turning into, wouldn't you know it, Mr. Bobbica's hairdresser crack joint. I hated that place. This one time I smoked a rock the size of a child in there, then woke up with an ice cube up my ass and my hands tied to a public toilet. In that moment, for the 1000th time, I swore I'd never smoke crack again, so I wasn't sure I should risk walking to old memories in that. But I knew this girl was the only one for me. I had no choice. Some things are more important. I held my breath. I ventured in, and the place was very different. Before me was a large crowd of elderly people, but they weren't doing anything elderly people would ordinarily be doing, like drinking tea or discussing Jesus. Rather, they were having sexual intercourse with each other. It was like an orgy of sorts, but not the beautiful kind, more the kind where the whole room was coated with the odor of dairy to the point that actual wet cheese had formed in the ceiling and was dripping down like stalactites in a perverse cave of human humidity. And I can't express this enough, everyone was really, really old. A fucking grandparental mess, and all of them wearing expressionless faces. No smiles, no moans of pleasure, no grunts of satisfaction. Pure silence except for the sound of barely erect old man dicks being vacuumed by overused aging vaginas, like someone had filled a bath with water and then slapped it with various sizes of trout. No happiness, no effort, just large trout slapping around in dirty bath water. And they were stacked on top of each other like Lego, nearly to the ceiling. The scene was so repulsively offensive that I almost forgot the girl I loved was somewhere in here, but even when I remembered, I was unable to see her anywhere. As I scoured the area, some old naked lady signaled to me from the human pretzel in the middle of the room, and like an idiot, I walked over to her. She didn't look too healthy and wasn't wearing her dentures, which she seemed proud of because her mouth was wide open as she gargled some brown mouthwash. It bubbled over her gums while she scraped her phallic-looking nipples aggressively onto the carpet. I hesitatingly approached her while she just kept on gargling, which kind of pissed me off because she was wasting my time. Just as I was about to turn away in frustration, she swallowed whatever that brown shit was and then spoke. "In this exact moment, you have failed your quest, Cecil." "My name's not Cecil," I replied. "Well, whatever your name is, it doesn't matter. You didn't carry out the dying request of a Banghangman, and I'm here to tell you that due to this failure, you shall be suffering a great deal in your near future." It took me a few minutes, but I vaguely recalled what she was talking about. Some door or something? Damn, how did I get into this mess to begin with? And where the fuck was that girl? "Your mind is damaged, but it thinks too much," she continued, "and your body obeys." Funny enough, I actually got my palm read by a hooker gypsy once, and she said the exact same thing. I guess it's not that funny, more scary, but I laughed anyway. The granny didn't like that and sternly interrupted. "This is no time for funny, young man. Very soon you shall be visited by a mouth much worse than mine, and then no laugh shall escape your core ever again. Say, do you want a blowjob?" What, after a speech like that? I drew back. You gotta be shitting me, Granny. Fucking hell, weirdo. But maybe you can help me out in another way, because you do come across quite wise amongst this otherwise distasteful display of human affection. Tell me, did you happen to see the girl of my dreams walk by any time recently? Her eyes fluttered, and then she opened her mouth, which was again filled with that brown liquid, and she began to gargle once more. Slowly, she slid backwards along the carpet, towards the pile of bodies, her eye contact fixed, as her foaming gums mouthed what seemed to be the words, "You shall remember your brain." And then she disappeared into the old orgy, as if it had consumed and removed her from the world forever. Now, I'm not very good at all this metaphorical bullshit, and so I promptly decided to forget that little interaction immediately. All I knew was that I needed a drink so bad, and the girl of my dreams was still nowhere to be seen, as if she herself had been stolen up by this mash of wrinkly skin, except a girl like that surely never would be. That's when I remembered Mr. Bobbica's hairdressing salon, however different it looked now, always had a room near the back, which served as the designated area for peroxiding hair with swimming pool chemicals during the day, and as an area of mass drug consumption at night. I stood on my toes and could just barely see it, as the door's path had been completely cut off by this decrepit sex circus. The smell was getting to my head, and I briefly considered stripping down and just fucking these grannies for everything it was worth, but reminded myself that I was supposed to be in love recently, and my angel could very well be behind that door over there. And so I did the only thing I could think of, and began to climb the hairy, pink, human mountain. I took it slow, and when I stood on one bald man's head, it was purely accidental, honest. He grunted and flipped me the bird. I was about to tell him where to shove it, but then noticed where was already occupied. Besides, I need not waste my time on him. He wasn't going to fulfill my greatest fantasy, although I'm sure he would give it his best shot, bless him. So I ventured on, careful to use non-vital body parts as foot ledges, and excusing myself when necessary. I was so close that I could practically see the back door when my foot suddenly slipped and felt like it was about to be pulled right off. I looked down to see it had been swallowed up by some old lady's gaping pussy. I was knee-deep in it, and this bitch didn't even fucking notice. She was preoccupied, frantically sucking off some flaccid grandpa while he read Think and Grow Rich out loud. A different granny was nibbling on her stretched tit from a few feet away, and I wanted nothing more to do with any of this. I steadied my other foot and then yanked on my leg as hard as I could until a noise like an inverted fart suctioned the air and my leg came shooting back out without my boot on. I nearly fell over, but instead was frozen by a peculiar sight indeed. I watched as my boot tumbled into an endless pit within this yawning vag, as if I was looking down an opening into another universe, and from my aerial viewpoint I could see far into the depths of her uterus, which shed light on what seemed to be a town below. There were several houses with people standing outside of them, many miles below where I stood, screaming for help as my boot fell and eventually hit the ground beside them. I watched all this in shock as the vagina began to close again, filling the inhabitants with looks of hopelessness as the habitat returned to darkness. Moments later, the granny lips touched once more and trapped these poor people in that empty space, lost forever. I wondered if it would be possible to somehow save this town, maybe with a rope or a ladder of some kind, but I was much more concerned about how terrible my legs smelt, and that my sock was so saturated with lady jelly that I could see my foot right through it. Perfect. Just perfect. I really liked that boot. Oh well, hopefully someone down there could make use of it, but that, as they say, is a different story. I had wasted enough time and decided to make a dive for the door. I took a flying leap of faith from this mass stack of people and misjudged it really badly, slamming headfirst into the back wall I was trying to get to all this time. It hurt, I think. I swallowed the tooth. But fuck it, I was so close now and I knew exactly what to do. I was going to swing that door open and stare right at the lady of my dreams' boobs. I was going to tell her how I felt, tell her about how we could be together and how much sex we could have. I would mention how the stars probably lined up in one single movement the day she was born, just so they could all witness her glorious arrival. I would tell her that my leg may stink of pussy, but my heart stank of love. I was going to tell her a lot of things until she agreed that me and her were soulmates, just like in the movies. What an anticlimax it was when I opened the door to see Mr. Bobbyker sitting alone on a wooden chair with a crack pipe in the one hand and a crack pipe in the other. He had aged a lot since I last seen him. His hair was a little whiter, and he had grown a light beard which joined up with his eyebrows. He also had a zit on his forehead, which suited him, kind of like some religious Hindu character. Some may even say he was sexy for a mid-60-year-old drug addict, but not me. I'm straight. He looked up and smiled, showing the gaps in his teeth that he had lost after many years of substance abuse. "Jerry!" he exclaimed as he waved his yellow hand at me. "My name's not Jerry," I replied, and he laughed like a horse with throat cancer. "What are you doing here? You want some crack?" he offered me generously. Yes, I do," I responded, and we both smoked until the sun came up. And that is the end of chapter 1. If you want to read the rest of the story, please click the link below and sponsor some money and make this possible. I also want to say that was a very difficult story to read out loud in a house full of people. Bye-bye!